The first time she looked at my resume, she didn't smile. She didn't try to be nice. She didn't give me that soft, fake comfort people give when they already decided you're not worth the trouble. She just folded the paper in half, met my eyes, and said, "You're hired, but the only position left is dishwasher." I should have felt ashamed. Instead, I felt my chest loosen for the first time in months, like someone finally opened a window in a room I'd been suffocating in. My name is Eli. I'm 34, and 6 months ago my life fell apart so fast I didn't even have time to brace. My wife of 7 years left me for a guy she worked with. The divorce papers weren't even dry when my company in Denver decided I was redundant. That was the word. Redundant. Like I was a spare part they could toss in a drawer and forget. I didn't fight. I didn't beg. I just packed what I had left into my beat-up 2008 Honda Civic. Clothes. A few books. A cracked coffee mug I couldn't bring myself to throw away. Then I drove east without a plan. Just a need to get far away from places that still remembered who I used to be. That's how I ended up in Ashmere, Massachusetts, a small coastal town where the air tastes like salt and seaweed, and the houses look like they've been standing their ground against storms for centuries. The streets are narrow. The fences are wooden and crooked. Lobster traps are stacked in front yards like they're normal lawn decorations. Seagulls scream overhead like they own the sky. Time moves slower here, and at first, that felt like relief. Then my savings started shrinking. I rented a room above a locksmith shop on the edge of town. It's small, smells faintly like metal shavings, and the radiator clanks so loud at night it feels like it's trying to scare ghosts away. I lived off instant noodles and cheap deli sandwiches, stretching every dollar until it almost didn't count. Every day, I walked through town with a stack of resumes in my jacket pocket. Every day, I heard some version of "no too old." Not local, not experienced enough. Not what we're looking for. Each rejection felt like a door slamming shut, and I was running out of doors. That Tuesday afternoon, I hit my limit. The sky was heavy with clouds and a cold drizzle that soaked you slowly, the kind that sneaks into your clothes and sits in your bones. I'd just been turned away from a hardware store. A guy in a flannel shirt told me they didn't need city types, and my boots squeaked as I walked out like they were mocking me. My stomach growled, but I didn't want to spend another $5 on food I couldn't afford. I wanted something warm, something cheap, somewhere to sit for a minute and not feel like a failure. That's when I saw it. The Drift Cafe. A small place tucked between a bait shop and a laundromat. A crooked wooden sign hanging over the door. A single string of fairy lights glowing in the window, like the place was trying to look welcoming, even on a gloomy day. The smell hit me before I even stepped inside. Coffee, syrup, butter. Something sweet like waffles. For the first time all day, I felt like I could breathe. Inside, the cafe was warm and alive. Wooden tables worn smooth from years of elbows. A chalkboard menu with smudged specials. A jukebox in the corner playing soft old jazz I didn't recognize. The windows were fogged from the heat, and the whole place felt like a little pocket of comfort trapped inside a cold town. There weren't many customers. 2 older guys arguing about fishing. A woman typing on a laptop in the corner. A man sipping coffee by the window like he had nowhere else to be. I stood at the counter, dripping rain onto the floor, my resume damp in my hand like a sad little flag. That's when I saw her. She was behind the counter wiping down a coffee machine that looked older than me. Wavy brown hair pulled back loosely, a few strands falling across her cheek. Eyes sharp, like she'd seen enough of life to know not to trust it too easily. But there was softness there too, like she still cared even if she didn't show it to everyone. She wore a black apron over a gray sweater. Her movements were steady and practiced, like she owned the rhythm of the place. I cleared my throat. "Excuse me," I said, voice rougher than I meant. "I was wondering if you're hiring." She didn't look up right away, just kept wiping the machine slow and deliberate. "We're not," she said, flat but not cruel. My chest sank anyway. "Sorry," I muttered, the familiar sting hitting hard. "Can I at least leave my resume?" "Just in case." She stopped. "Set the rag down." Then she turned and finally looked at me. Her eyes swept over me. The worn jacket. The faded jeans. The exhaustion I couldn't hide no matter how straight I stood. I held out the resume like it weighed 100 pounds. She took it. Her fingers brushed the paper, and that small touch felt like something I wasn't ready for. She scanned the page longer than I expected. Logistics work. Odd jobs. A gap where my life had cracked open. Then she folded it in half, looked up, and said, "I'm Mara." Her voice was calm, like she already decided something. "We've got a dishwasher position, morning shift. It's not glamorous, and it pays like it." I blinked, caught off guard by the sudden opening. "I'll take it," I said fast. Mara tilted her head slightly, like she was measuring me in a way my resume never could. Then she said casually, like she was commenting on the weather, "I usually don't hire men I like." I froze, my brain scrambled to figure out if I heard her right. If she was joking. If she meant something else. She didn't laugh, she didn't explain. She just gave me a small, unreadable smile that made my pulse jump. "7 tomorrow," she said, already turning back to the coffee machine. "Don't be late." I stood there for a second longer, heart thumping hard in my chest. I walked back out into the drizzle, and the cold air hit my face like a slap. But something had changed. I wasn't sure if I just found a job, or if I just stepped into a story that was going to ruin me in the best way. I barely slept that night. Not because I was excited about washing dishes for $6 an hour. Not because my room above the locksmith shop was loud, though the radiator did clank like it was trying to start a fight with the wall. I couldn't sleep because her words kept looping in my head. "I usually don't hire men I like." It was a strange thing to say to a stranger. It didn't sound like flirting. It didn't sound like a joke either. It sounded like a warning wrapped in a calm voice. By the time my alarm went off, it felt like I had only closed my eyes for a minute. I pulled on my cleanest jeans, a plain shirt, and the same jacket that still smelled faintly like rain. The streets of Ashmere were quiet at dawn, the kind of quiet you only get near the ocean. I drove with my windows cracked, breathing in salt air like it might wake me up. The Drift Cafe was already glowing when I pulled up, fairy lights in the window, warm light behind fogged glass. It looked like a safe place again, even at 6:45 in the morning. I opened the door and the smell hit me hard. Fresh coffee, waffles, butter. My stomach growled like it had been waiting for this. Mara was already there, tying her apron behind the counter. She didn't look surprised to see me. She didn't look happy either. Just calm, like she expected me to show up and wasn't going to waste energy praising me for it. "You're early," she said. I didn't want to give her anything to pick at, so I nodded. "Traffic," I lied. "There was no traffic." Mara pointed toward the back without even looking. "Sinks back there. Gloves under the counter. Don't break anything." That was the whole training. I walked into the back area and found the industrial sink, the kind made of metal thick enough to survive a war. Next to it was an ancient dishwasher machine that looked like it belonged in a museum. There were stacks of mugs and plates already waiting, like somebody set them up as a test. I pulled on the gloves and started scrubbing. At first, it was simple. Hot water. Soap. Scrub. Rinse. Dry. Stack. Then the work kept coming. Waffle plates covered in syrup. Forks sticky from jam. Coffee mugs stained dark at the bottom. The kind of mess that doesn't look like much until you're standing over a sink doing it for hours. My hands were strong from warehouse work back in Denver, but they weren't used to this. The hot water stung. The soap dried my skin. My shoulder started aching by 8:30. I kept my head down. I needed this job. Not just for money, for pride, for proof that I wasn't done. The cafe started filling up fast. I could hear it through the small pass-through window. Voices. Chairs scraping. The bell above the front door ringing every few minutes. Mara moved like she owned the chaos. She poured coffee with one hand while taking orders with the other. She called people by name like she'd been feeding them their whole lives. "Morning, Hank." "Same as usual." "Morning, Mrs. Caldwell." "Waffle with extra strawberries." She didn't smile much, but people smiled at her anyway, like they trusted her. I watched her in quick glimpses, catching her reflection in the coffee machine. Steady hands. Calm eyes. A woman who didn't fall apart no matter how busy the world got. I didn't know why that mattered to me, but it did. Around 9, the dishwasher made a horrible grinding sound and stopped. I stared at it, water dripping from my gloves. Of course, I muttered. I tried a few buttons. Nothing. Then I did what I always do when something breaks. I got under it. The back panel came off with 2 screws. The inside looked like a mess of old hoses and rusted parts. I twisted a knob, tightened a clamp, and restarted it. It groaned, shuddered, then started running again. I let out a breath. When I stood up, Mara was at the pass-through window watching me. Her eyes were unreadable, but her posture was relaxed, like she wasn't just checking if the machine worked, she was checking something else. "You fixed that?" she asked. I wiped my hands on a rag. It wasn't a big deal, just a loose clamp. Mara nodded once, like she filed that away. "Not bad, city boy," she said. City boy. It should have sounded insulting. But coming from her, it sounded like a nickname she didn't hate. I shrugged. Just trying not to get fired. "You won't," she said. Then she walked away like she hadn't just made my chest feel warm. The day kept moving. By noon, my arms were sore. My fingers were pruned. But the stacks of clean dishes were high, and the kitchen didn't look like a disaster anymore. During a rare, quiet moment, the cafe emptied out. Only one guy sat in the corner, reading a newspaper, sipping coffee, like he had all the time in the world. I was wiping down the sink when Mara appeared in the back, holding 2 small cups of espresso. She set one down beside me without a word. I stared at it, then at her. "Peace offering?" I asked. Mara sipped hers. "You've been here one day, and you haven't broken a mug. That's worth something." I picked up the cup. The warmth seeped into my hands, and for a second, I forgot about my empty savings account. Forgot about Denver. Forgot about being left behind. "Thanks," I said. Mara watched me take a sip. "It's strong," she said, like she was warning me. "Good," I said. "I need strong." Her mouth twitched, almost a smile. She leaned against the counter, arms crossed, studying me. "Most guys don't last in the back," she said. "They complain, they quit, or they try to flirt their way out of work." I laughed quietly. "I'm not trying to flirt my way out of anything." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "You're not flirting at all." My face warmed. I wasn't sure if she was accusing me or teasing me. With her, it was hard to tell. I held her gaze, surprised at myself. "Maybe I don't know how," I said. Mara's expression shifted, something softer flickering behind her sharp look. Then she turned away, clearing her throat like she'd let herself feel something by accident. "Dishes still need washing," she said. I nodded, but my hands stayed still for 1 extra second, holding the espresso cup like it mattered. Because it did. I came to Ashmere to disappear. And somehow, in one morning of dishwater and coffee steam, Mara had made me feel seen again. After that first day, the Drift Cafe stopped feeling like a place I visited and started feeling like a place I belonged to. Not in a big, proud way. More like a quiet truth that settled in without asking permission. I showed up at 7 every morning. Same routine, same salty air in my lungs as I walked from my car to the door. Same bell over the entrance, same warm smell of waffles and coffee wrapping around me before I even took off my jacket. Mara was always already there. Some mornings she would nod at me and nothing else. Other mornings she would toss a short instruction over her shoulder like she didn't want to admit she was glad I showed up. "Filters are low. Waffle batter needs mixing. Fix the back door, it's sticking again." Little by little, she gave me more to do than just dishes. Not because she was trying to be nice, because she noticed I could handle it. And that made me want to handle it even more. The dishwashing itself didn't get easier, but I got used to the rhythm. Hot water, soap, steam, the ache in my shoulders, the endless mugs with lipstick marks and coffee stains. I learned which plates needed extra scrubbing because the syrup dried like glue. I learned how to stack the clean mugs so they didn't chip. I learned how to keep my head down and let the work calm me instead of swallow me. But no matter how busy I stayed, I couldn't stop noticing Mara. It was in the small things. The way she hummed along to the jukebox when she thought nobody was paying attention. The way she tucked loose hair behind her ear when she was thinking. The way her eyes would flick toward the back when she heard the dishwasher groan, checking if I had it handled. She never hovered. She never babied me, but she watched. And when she watched, it felt like she was seeing more than a dishwasher. It felt like she was seeing the man I used to be before Denver broke me. 2 weeks in, the dishwasher died again. This time, it made a loud pop and stopped mid-cycle with water pooling on the floor. I cursed under my breath, grabbed a wrench, and got to work before the mess could spread. While I was on my knees tightening a hose clamp, I felt someone behind me. I looked up and saw Mara in the doorway, coffee mug in hand. She leaned against the frame, calm as ever. "You fix everything," she said. I shrugged. I used to work logistics. If something broke, you fixed it. If you didn't, the whole line stopped. Mara's eyes held mine for a second longer than normal. Then she nodded once and walked away like she didn't want me to notice that look. It was that look that followed me through the day. Not the sharp boss look. Something softer. Curious. Like she was trying to decide if I was going to stay or vanish like everyone else. By the end of my first month, regulars started calling me by name. "Morning, Eli. Hey, city boy. You still surviving back there?" I'd grin and nod, hands full of plates, and for the first time in a long time I didn't feel invisible. One Friday evening, the cafe emptied out early. The weather had turned colder, and the ocean wind was louder. The fairy lights glowed soft in the window, making the place feel like a warm secret. I stayed late to help close. Mara didn't ask. I just did it. I wiped down the counters, took out the trash, mopped the floor. She counted the register. The jukebox played a slow jazz song that made the whole place feel like it was breathing. When I finished mopping, I noticed Mara sitting by the window at her usual table. But she wasn't drinking coffee. She wasn't writing anything down. She was staring at her phone like it weighed 100 pounds. I hesitated, not sure if I should leave her alone. Then she spoke without looking up. "That's Tom," she said. I froze. She tilted her phone slightly, and I saw a photo on the screen. Mara, a few years younger, standing behind this same counter with a man beside her. His arm was around her shoulders. They both had easy smiles, the kind that come from believing life will stay good. My throat tightened. "Tom was your husband," I said quietly. Mara nodded, eyes still on the screen. "He had a stroke right there," she said, nodding toward the counter. 3 years ago. Dropped a tray of mugs and just went." Her voice didn't break. That scared me more than if it had. I set the mop aside and walked over slowly, like I was approaching something fragile. "I'm sorry," I said, and I meant it. Mara finally looked up at me, her eyes sharp but tired. "We built this place together," she said. "Every penny we had. Every late night. Every stupid argument about paint colors and menu boards. He loved it. The noise. The people. Even the bad days." She swallowed hard. "When he died, I opened back up 3 weeks later. Not because I was strong. Because I couldn't afford to stop. If I stopped, I'd have to sit in the quiet and feel all of it." She stared down at her phone again like it was the only thing holding the memory in place. I sat across from her, hands resting on the table. "You didn't break," I said. "You're still here." Mara let out a slow breath. "Some days I feel broken anyway," she admitted. The words hit me because I knew that feeling. I didn't plan to say it, but it came out. "I get it," I said. Mara's eyes lifted to mine. "How?" I swallowed, feeling my throat tighten. "My wife left me," I said. "Cheated. 7 years, and she walked away like it meant nothing. Then I lost my job. They called me redundant. Like my whole life was some extra thing they didn't need." Mara's face softened, just a fraction. "So you came here," she said. I nodded. "I came here because I didn't know where else to go." For a moment, we just looked at each other across that worn wooden table. The cafe quiet. The fridge humming. The ocean wind tapping the window. Then Mara's voice dropped low. "You're not special, Eli," she said. My stomach dropped, but she kept going before I could react. "I mean that the way you think you are. You're not the only one trying not to break. But I see it in you. You're trying to keep going anyway." Her words were blunt, but they landed warm, like someone placing a hand on your shoulder instead of pitying you. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Mara's phone screen went dark, but she didn't turn it back on. She set it face down on the table like she was done looking at the past for tonight. Then, she surprised me. She asked, "Why did you ask me if I'd teach you?" I blinked. "What?" "That first day," she said, "when I told you the only position left was dishwasher. You asked, 'Will you teach me?'" I stared at her, remembering my own words. I had said it without thinking, because I was desperate and tired, and needed someone to show me how to survive again. I shrugged, feeling heat creep up my neck. "Because I didn't want to fail," I admitted. "And you looked like someone who doesn't fail." Mara's eyes held mine, and something in the air shifted. "I fail all the time," she said softly. "I just don't do it where people can see." The honesty in her voice made my chest ache. Without thinking, I reached across the table, not grabbing her hand, just placing my fingertips near hers. "Maybe you don't have to hide it here," I said. Mara stared at my hand for a long moment. Then she didn't pull away. She let her fingers rest against mine, light as a touch, like a question. My heart thudded hard. It wasn't a kiss. It wasn't a confession. But it felt like the start of something that could ruin my careful plans to stay numb. And in that quiet cafe with the fairy lights glowing and the ocean wind humming outside, I realized the scariest part wasn't that I might fall for Mara. It was that she might let me. After that night by the window, I started waking up with a strange feeling in my chest. Not pain exactly. More like a steady pull, like something in Ashmere had wrapped a rope around me and wasn't letting go. The Drift Cafe was no longer just my job. It was my routine, my anchor, and the one place where I wasn't trying to pretend I was fine. Mara and I didn't talk about the moment our fingers touched. We didn't replay it. We didn't bring it up the next morning, but it changed the air between us. Her instructions got shorter, but her eyes lingered longer. My jokes got quieter, but my attention stayed on her even when I tried to focus on work. And people noticed. It started with the barista Kay, a young woman with heavy eyeliner and a mouth that moved faster than her hands. She would smirk when Mara and I passed each other in the narrow space behind the counter. She would nudge another worker when Mara handed me a towel or when I fixed something without being asked. Then customers started doing it too. An older guy in a trucker hat leaned over the counter one morning and said, "You two sure spend a lot of time together." I laughed it off, but my face burned. Ashmere was small, the kind of town where you could hear your own name in a whisper before you even walked into the room. And I hated the idea that I might be turning Mara into gossip. She had built this place, kept it alive after her husband died. The Drift wasn't just a cafe, it was her survival. I didn't want to be the reason anyone looked at her like a story. So one night after closing, when the last chair was flipped on the last table and the fairy lights were the only glow left, I said the thing I'd been swallowing for days. Maybe I should quit. Mara froze with the cash drawer open in front of her. Bills fanned out in her hands like she was mid-count and suddenly forgot what numbers were. She didn't look up right away. "Why?" she asked, voice flat. I swallowed, staring at the floor like a kid about to confess something stupid. "People are talking," I said, "about us. I don't want to make it harder for you." Mara set the bills down slowly and finally looked at me. Her eyes were sharp, not angry, just tired of the world's opinions. "If I let gossip decide who I keep around," she said, "I'd have nothing left." I shifted my weight, feeling shame in my chest. "It's your place, Mara. You shouldn't have to deal with that because of me." Her jaw tightened. "Because of you," she repeated. "Like you think you're the problem." Then she surprised me. She stepped closer, stopping right in front of me, close enough that I could smell coffee and cinnamon on her. "You're not messing anything up, Eli," she said. "You're keeping it together more than you know." Those words hit me hard because they were the same words I wanted to hear back in Denver when everything collapsed. But right after she said it, I saw something shift in her face. Like she realized she was letting herself get too close. And that's when the distance started. The next few days, Mara stopped lingering after closing. No more quiet talks by the window. No more espresso cups placed beside me with a look that meant more than the drink. She stayed professional, fair, calm, but the warmth was gone. And that was worse than being rejected. I kept my head down, scrubbed dishes until my hands were raw, and tried to pretend it didn't matter. Tried to pretend I didn't feel the empty space she left in the room when she walked away too quickly. Then on Monday morning, she didn't show up at all. My phone buzzed at 6. Mom's in the hospital. Handle the cafe, that was it. No extra words. My stomach dropped. I'd never opened the drift without her. I didn't know all the numbers, all the supplies, all the small decisions she made without thinking, but I also knew this was bigger than my fear. So I unlocked the door, flipped on the lights, and started the coffee machine. The bell rang as customers came in, and I forced my hands to move. Orders, waffles, coffee, clean plates, refill cream, restock napkins. It was chaos. The espresso machine jammed twice. I burned one batch of waffles because I forgot the timer. A customer complained about his coffee being too weak and I wanted to throw the mug at the wall. Kay helped, but she wasn't Mara. Nobody was. By the end of the first day, my feet ached and my head felt full of noise. I locked the door and stood there in the quiet, staring at the tables, feeling the weight of how much Mara carried every day without anyone clapping for her. The second day was worse. The milk delivery was late. A pipe under the sink started leaking again. A regular asked where Mara was, and when I said hospital, his face softened like he finally remembered she was a human being. At night, I went home to my room above the locksmith shop, but it didn't feel like rest. It felt like waiting. On the third day, I opened the cafe and kept it moving again, even though my arms were heavy and my patience was thin. Then the door opened. Mara walked in. Her hair was messier than usual, pulled back but loose strands falling around her face. Her eyes looked tired, not from sleep, but from worry. Her sweater hung on her shoulders like it didn't belong there. She stopped in the doorway and looked around the cafe like she was seeing it for the first time. The tables were clean. The coffee was brewing. Customers were laughing softly. The drift was alive. Mara's eyes found mine. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she walked closer, slow, like she was afraid she'd fall apart if she rushed. "You kept it alive," she said. I shrugged, trying to play it off, but my voice betrayed me. "You're the one who makes it alive, Mara." I just kept it warm. Her face softened, and she reached up, brushing her hand lightly over my shoulder. It was a small touch, but it felt like she was letting herself come back to me. "I'm tired, Eli," she said quietly, "but not too tired to see what's changing here." My heart pounded. I didn't know what to say, so I said the truth. "I'm here," I said. "I'm not going anywhere." Mara held my gaze for a long moment. Then she nodded like she decided something. A month later, she called me into the back office after closing. The office was cramped. A small desk, a filing cabinet, a single bulb hanging from the ceiling, the smell of paper and coffee grounds. Mara sat on the edge of the desk, apron off, hair loose, and in front of her was a stack of papers clipped together. "Close the door," she said. I did. "Sit," she added. I sat, my hands suddenly restless. She slid the papers toward me. On top was a title, The Drift Cafe, Harbor Branch. I stared at it, confused. Mara leaned forward, eyes locked on mine. "I've been thinking about the future," she said. "This place has been my life, but it's not enough anymore. There's an old fish market by the harbor. Cheap. I want to turn it into a second drift." I looked up, trying to follow. "You want my opinion?" I asked. Mara's lips twitched, not quite a smile. "I want more than your opinion," she said. My breath caught. "If you're staying in Ashmere," she continued, "if you're staying here, I want you with me. As a partner in the business. In whatever this is between us." The room went still. All I could hear was the faint hum of the fridge outside the door and my own heartbeat. I stared down at the papers again. Numbers, timelines, a simple sketch of a new logo. It wasn't just a dream, it was real, and she was offering it to me. "You sure?" I asked, voice quiet. "I'm not exactly a businessman. I'm just a guy who got lucky and needed a job." Mara smiled then, and it wasn't unreadable anymore. It was open. Real. "You're not just anything, Eli," she said. "You showed up. You stayed. You kept this place running when I couldn't. You're not who I expected to change my life, but you are." The words hit so deep my eyes stung. I thought about Denver. The divorce, the job loss, the drive east with no plan. I thought about how I walked into this cafe, desperate and broken, and she gave me the only job left. Dishwasher. I lifted my eyes to her. "I'm in," I said. "For the cafe. For you. For this." Mara didn't speak. She just reached across the desk and took my hand, her fingers warm and steady. "Good," she whispered, "because I'm tired of doing this alone." I signed my name next to hers. Not just on paper, but in my life. The next morning, I walked in at 7 like always. Mara was behind the counter, tying her apron. She looked up, gave me a small, knowing smile, and tossed me a rag. "Don't get cocky, partner," she said. "Dishes still need washing." I laughed, and the sound felt lighter than it had in years. It wasn't a fairy tale. No ring. No grand speech. Just two people who had been broken and kept going, finding each other in a small-town cafe. And somehow, that was the most beautiful kind of love.